Hey guys, Cap1 here. I am doing this video because there is a sweeping set of AP item changes on the PBE, some of which is very, very relevant to Singed, especially the changes to Rylais and Liandrys and potentially the changes to Morello. So I'm going to go over all of it throughout the video, but I'm going to focus on what the most important change I think is, which is the change to Liandrys. Now, this is the change that they had to Liandrys originally on PBE, okay? They removed the magic pen because they didn't want it to blow up squishies, and they changed it to a maximum of 10% damage amplification with 2% per second up to 5 seconds. So over the course of 5 seconds, you get 10% stronger in terms of the damage that you're outputting. And then they changed the burn passive from current health to max health, which 2% max health up to 4% max health per second. Really, that's pretty busted, honestly, on any character that can use Rylais Liandrys together. That's pretty busted. And because of that, they've already nerfed it on PBE, which I think is fair. I think this is very fair. They changed the burn to 1.5% non-CC'd to 3% to 3% CC'd, so 1.5% doubled to 3%. I think that this is much more fair, and the reason why I don't think that this version will be quite as broken is because if you compare the power spike that Singed gets from Liandrys to like the power spike that other champions get from their first items, it's a little bit different, right? The power spike that Camille gets from completing a Triforce, or the power spike that like a Riven or a fucking Fiora is a good example gets from completing Black Cleaver, the power spike that a Jace gets from completing fucking Duskblade, the power spike that a Gnar gets from completing Cleaver, or even a Frozen Mallet, things like that. Like it's so much, a lot of the time it feels so much stronger than what the current Liandrys does for Singed. The reason that I am currently rushing the live Liandrys, which is the magic pen and the current health burn one, excuse me, is because that's the only real damage item that Singed can buy that actually amplifies his damage. Just straight up AP doesn't really amp his damage that much because of the nature of magic resistance and how it interacts with dot abilities. Magic resistance will reduce every tick of dot damage every single little time a tick of a dot hits. Excuse me. Every single little time that a tick of a dot hits, it's reduced each and every single time by MR. Now, if you hit someone with a burst damage ability, it's just reduced one time. If you hit someone with like a auto attack through armor, it's just reduced one time. If you hit someone with a dot, a magic dot, every single time the dot procs, the damage is reduced. Now, that ends up feeling like as Singed, you absolutely need Rylais you absolutely need Liandrys to deal any sort of meaningful damage. And the worst part is currently, as the fight goes on as Singed and enemies' health gets lower and lower, Liandrys does less and less damage because it's current health, right? So at the start of the fight, it's decent. But then like as people get to like, I guess like even 75, 65% health, it just ends up doing nothing. And then a lot of the time you'll die and you'll end a fight and people will just walk away on a like 150 HP, like 25 HP, and you can see your Liandrys taking for 1 damage each time. It just feels really awful whenever that happens. It feels like the gold that you invested into an item is not paying off, and that the only reason you buy the item is out of necessity. Because it just, I guess you could say the same thing for the Rylais Liandrys combo. Honestly, the only reason I buy Rylais after Liandrys currently is not because of the AP, not because of the slow. The AP and slow are pretty fucking useless, honestly. The AP is not high enough to matter because of the nature of dots and how it works with Singed and how he deals damage. And the slow is honestly pretty bad. 20%, nothing, but it has to be balanced that way, because if that 20% slow is any higher, then ranged champions will abuse the fuck out of it, and you can really quickly make melee champions just useless with any slow higher than 20%, in my opinion. Even 25%, melee champions would suffer horrendously. So I actually just think that it's kind of bad, but it's kind of balanced at the same time, because how do you balance an effect that as powerful as the Rylais slow? but that's another topic for another video. The only reason I currently buy Rylais is because I want to double the burn damage from Liandrys, because that's the only way that Singe can scale. Singe does not really scale with AP that well, just because of how his kit works. It's so simplistic, like just pure AP doesn't help him that much because of how magic resistance works, because of how much natural magic resistance is in the game. Every character now, including squishy range champions, get natural magic resistance per level. Every single character. There's so much shielding in the game. There's so much ambient like survivability that like just pure AP for Singe, where his one ability is a dot, like his one damage ability is a dot. It doesn't help him that much. You need percent damage, and that's the only way you can really hurt people as Singed. Now, the reason why I think having 1.5% max health damage per second is not that crazy is because just that burn alone, you need 150 seconds worth of damage to kill somebody with that. That's not accounting for this essence drain. That's not accounting for, you know, Singed ult. It's not accounting for poison trail damage. But all I'm saying is this burn by itself, you need 150 seconds, right, to kill somebody. The current Liandrys, if you think about it, it's literally fucking impossible to kill somebody with that burn because of the way it works. It deals current health damage. You can't, it doesn't kill people. It can't kill people unless you get someone to like 1 health, and then maybe it'll tick for like 1, but even then, like the burn itself will never kills anybody. It's not intended to work like that. This burn, however, can actually kill somebody and make it feel like a decent item, I think. So I'm on board with this change. I think the 1.5% burn to 3% burn is pretty fair. Someone on, it was actually Geo7, who is a fellow Singed main. He wrote on r/Singed mains. He's a fellow veteran Singed main is what I meant. He's been around a long time. He wrote a little write-up on the damage percentage that you can do through different amounts of HP to targets, depending on which version of Liandrys you have. So this is the live Liandrys. If you're fighting a target that has, let's say you're fighting an 80 carry, right? 80 carry has 1500 HP. The 2%, you get about 14.5 DPS, right? The 4%, so this is if you have Rylais and Liandrys currently, you do about 26.5% damage per second, right? So you can kind of see across the board, it goes up a little bit for like it gets really bad actually as you start to play against characters that have like 4,000, 3,000 HP, like 45.5 DPS every second to a character who has 3,000 HP. That's fucking nothing. Like honestly, that's nothing. But if you take a look at this current Liandrys they have in PBE, even the fucking 1.5% version is just clearly better than the 2% current, because you're going under the assumption that this is ticking them down throughout the course of the fight. Now, if you're looking at the 3% max HP, it's still good, I think. I don't think that doing 120 DPS to a 4,000, I don't think that that's even that crazy. If you think about it, 120 DPS is basically like auto attacking, is what that is. Like if you have say 100 100 AD, like no, you have like 75, 80 AD on Singed, right? And you're just auto attacking. That's actually more DPS than 120 DPS, because you'd have about 2 auto attacks. In the same time, it'd take like a second to go by, maybe like 1.5 auto attacks actually. So like it kind of puts into perspective like a fighter, right? A fighter who has actual scaling attack speed, like say Jax, right? Say there's a Jax with like 1.8, 1.7 attack speed, with a Triforce with a Titanic Hydra. That's like, this is less than 1 auto attack worth of damage over the course of a whole second for that Jax. It's not that crazy, but it will be a noticeable buff when you compare it to whatever the fuck like these old numbers are, right? Like compare 56 to 120%, like or 56 DPS on a 4K HP target to 120 DPS, right? So I think 45 DPS against a 1500 health 80 carry is really not that crazy. But I think 1.5% and 3% max health damage for the new Liandrys is, I think it's fair. This is a good comment. New Liandrys is more damage as long as the target is below 75% HP and less beforehand. This is because 75% HP is the cutoff where the item will currently do 1.5% max HP and slowly move down. So basically, the longer the fight goes, the stronger the item gets until 75% health is left on your target, and then it's just stronger, right? So before 75%, it's weaker. At 75, and after, it's stronger, which I think is that's what it should be, right? Isn't that the purpose of Liandrys, is to amplify dot damage over the course of a fight? That's the assumption that I always had whenever I looked at Liandrys as an item. Is I thought to myself, okay, well this will work well with dots because dots can consistently proc the passive, where you know, like a burst mage can't proc the passives often because they don't have access to dots. They have access to bursts, which don't reapply nearly as often as dots do. So I'm on board with the Liandrys change. Sorry, let me clarify. I'm on board with the 1.5%, 3% max health Liandrys change. The 2%, 4%, honestly, that was pretty broken. But I think the 1.5%, 3% is fair. Keep in mind, this chart, I don't think that this chart is factoring in any magic resistance at all. Any AD carry with half a brain would probably have a little bit of magic resistance. Any player with half a brain is going to have like a what do you call it? Hex Striker, or like a Null Magic Mantle, a Negatron Cloak, things like that. They won't just have naked MR stats like running around with what 43, 44, 45 MR late game. No, because that would honestly be stupid. But yeah, these numbers I think are fair. But keep in mind that these values will be lower once you factor in MR. So this will be quite a bit lower across the board, which honestly just even makes the current health version of Liandrys just seem that much worse. If these numbers right here, the DPS numbers for current Liandrys are really much worse because this isn't factoring in MR, then it's like, well, maybe you really do need to take a look at Liandrys and have it to be the 1.5%, 3% version. That's just my opinion, though. I'm pretty excited for that change. We can take a look at some of the other changes. Let me just make sure that they haven't actually changed any of the other items. Okay, so actually, you know, we'll just go over we won't look at this page. We'll look at this page. Whenever we find an item that is not the same. So okay, we'll look at Archangels, Haunting Guys. Okay, hold on. I have to look at Haunting Guys right now because it's part of Liandrys. So Haunting Guys, they increased the AP from Haunting Guys from live from 25 to 35, and they gave it the damage amp passive. What this basically means is that characters that currently abuse Liandrys as a second item after Morellonomicon can no longer use it at all because they can't even buy the Haunting Guys portion because there's no more magic pen. So characters like, good example, basically every single fucking mid lane mage right now who buys Liandrys as a second item just because they want the magic pen can't do it because there's no more magic pen on it. Like, magic pen is such a valuable stat, and they're just straight up removing it from Haunting Guys. I think that's good. It was meant to be like a bruiser-ish item anyways. Like, it's meant to be like a Rumble, like a fucking Vladimir, like a Singed item, things like that. The Mordekaiser item. It was never meant to be something that like Ari buys to have health and magic pen. Like, the stat line never made sense for it, in my opinion. So I think that that's fair too. We'll go through the rest of these. Okay, so Lost Chapter. The first one is they made a completely new item. It's called Spellbound Orb. 100 AP, 10% movement speed. Unique passive spell. Steal nearby allied and enemy spellcasts. Charge Spellbound Orb up to a cap. 200 maximum. Unique active spell burst. Gain up to a 50% decay. Up to a 50% decaying movement speed. Plus 0.25% per charge of Spellbound Orb. And up to 50 AP plus 0.25 per charge of Spellbound Orb for each spellcast stored in the Spellbound Orb. 8-second duration. 6-second cooldown. So basically what you do as a caster is use this at the start of a fight to up your movement speed, get to a target that you need to hit, and burst the shit out of them, because you're going to be getting 50 AP and 50 if you have it fully charged, mind you, fully charged at 200 spellcasts. This will give you 50 AP and 50% movement speed decaying over 8 seconds. Now that I think about it, this actually seems pretty fucking bad, because you need 200 spell casts to get that passive all the way to just giving you 50 AP. But with the cooldown being so low, the cooldown of it is 60 seconds. It might be good just to be a general item. Like if you have like maybe 20 spell cast charge into it, then you get like 10% move speed and 10 AP. I mean, sorry, no, you get like 5 AP, but it'd be like, sorry, yeah, 5% and 5 AP is what I meant. But like, I don't know, just the fact that you need so many charges to charge up Spellbound Orb doesn't seem like it'd be that good to me. Let's look at Lost Chapter. Lost Chapter is actually changed on PBE as well. Where'd Lost Chapter go? Okay, so these are all actually the change. The same. We'll look at it on this page then. So they changed Lost Chapter to give 10% CDR, and they increased the cost of it. So what they're doing here is basically changing Lost Chapter to be a build component of 3 different items. I think initially it would look like they're kind of overloading CDR into all of these items, but they're not, because each of these items gives 20% CDR, right? 10% in the stats, and then 10% in the unique passive. But the problem is the other 10% is in the unique passive. So technically, if you buy 2 of these items, you only have 30% CDR, not 40%. Now, with Transcendence, the rune, you gain 40% total. But I mean, you get the idea, right? Just buying 2 of these items by themselves without taking an additional rune or anything like that is not going to give you 40% CDR. So Rise will probably see like a small strength gain from these items, but it won't be like ridiculous. At least I don't think so. I could be wrong though. I have been wrong in the past. I don't know as much about mage itemization as I know about singed itemization, as I know about AP bruiser itemization. But that's kind of my take on it. I think that Archangel's is still going to be not good for Singe because his passive is just, it doesn't work with the whole pure mana anymore. So I don't think there's a whole lot of point to talk about it. I think Archangel's is just not a good item to have on him anymore. The AP itself is not worth it. You need health. If you want a pure AP item on Singed, you might as well just go like Deathcap or something, honestly, for this amount of gold. Probably better just to get an actual pure AP damage item instead of something that gives like a really weird combination of stats that don't work for a character that isn't mana based, I think. Luden's Echo now gives CDR and mana. So this one I think is a little bit different because it does give no, actually it does not give move speed anymore. In the build, it gives poke. Nope, completely garbage for Singe, doesn't matter. What I think about it in general though is that this will probably be the new item that everybody rushes in mid lane just because it gives poke, and it gives the same stats as the other 2. Archangels will scale, I guess, maybe a little bit harder, but at the same time, it's like, well, you might as well just rush this one while you have a tier or something and then just buy that one later. Because at the start of the game and up until like the probably early mid to like even early late game, Ludens will be putting out more damage just because of the Echo passive, which gives like the burst of damage around a target. Hextech GLP, they're completely removing the health, removing the Catalyst build path, and then snacking some AP onto it and then calling it a day, I guess. I don't understand the Hextech GLP change. This item is going to just be completely bad. The only character that really rushes it right now on live is Aurelion Sol. I don't know if he'll rush it anymore. He probably will just because he has to, because he needs the forward facing slow to be able to function. But I don't know, I don't understand this change. I thought Hextech GLP was fine as it was. It was like a little niche item. No one's going to buy Hextech over Ludens. Everyone's going to buy Ludens. There's no point in buying Hextech when you can just get like the same AP, the same mana, the same CDR, and arguably a better passive than the active Frostbolt. Like, it's just Ludens seems more reliable because you don't have to think about it, right? It's just, it happens and you can rely on it. It's a little bit more expensive, but like the amount of damage that you get from Frostbolt never really seemed that insane. I'm not sure if they actually buffed the Frostbolt damage. Let me check. Nope, didn't buff the Frostbolt damage. Frostbolt damage is the exact same. So yeah, not sure what they're doing with that. Before I talk about Morellonomicon, I want to talk about... Where's Rylais? Here. Rylais, they changed it from 75 to 85% AP. Sorry, not percent. 75 to 85 AP total. I agree. Rylais as a first item has felt horrendously weak. I feel like them giving 10 AP to Rylais still won't make me buy it first, just because I think that the slow is useful but weak, and I don't think that pure AP is the answer to singed damage problems. I think that Liandrys is the answer to singed damage problems. I don't think Rylais is. I still think the only reason Rylais is good on singed is because you just buy it for the damage amp for Liandrys. Like, that's why it's there, in my opinion, for him. Yeah, the slow is useful, but 20% is 20%. It's not that great. Most characters can relatively ignore it and be fine, especially characters who have gap closures. Basically, it's like they're not even being slowed at all. Characters like Karma, characters like Janna, who give movement speed buffs, characters like, I think Sona does too, just shit like that. They pretty much invalidate the slow because they're just so good at being mobile. So yeah, not a big fan of what they've done there. But I can see why they didn't, because no one wanted to fucking buy Rylais first. It just really sucked. I think Singed is the only character that was buying Rylais first, and personally I think the Singed players who are buying Rylais first are doing it wrong. I think that Liandrys first was the way, and I think going forward, Liandrys first will especially be the correct way. This is a really good one to talk about, I think. Now, the new Morellonomicon, they're calling it Morella's Cursed Tome. It will actually, in my opinion, be pretty useful on Singed, because they changed the stats for it, and it's giving Singed access to Grievous Wounds. Now, 3,000 gold, 80 AP, 300 health. Now, that alone, I think, is decent, but not quite as good as Liandry's. Now, I think this item, however, has reached a niche for Singed because they gave it health, because they gave it a much better build path for him that builds out of Ruby Crystal, I think. The 15 Magic Pen, not the most amazing for Singed, but here's the good part. Grievous Wounds. Grievous Wounds on an item that gives health and AP means that Singed can finally have access to be able to just shit on things like, not shit on things like Vlad, like he will never probably beat Vlad in lane, but you could probably be able to like just Grievous Wounds Vlad and be able to fight him, you know, like that'd be nice. You could use this against Fiora to Grievous Wounds Fiora. Use this against what's another like annoying healing champion, like Darius, I guess, maybe, but versus Darius you kind of need a little bit of survivability instead. Just really annoying spammy healing characters that aren't 80 carries. I think this will be good versus, because honestly, the amount of, like, yeah, Bramble Vest does exist, but the amount of gold that you have to put into Bramble Vest and pair it with Ninja Tabby is just, it's way too much, and it's not fair that you have to buy that far out of a useful build path for Bramble Vest and Tabby to be able to reduce healing. That's part of the reason I think, another topic for another day, but that's part of the reason why I think Fiora is so absolutely bonkers fucking busted, is because you have to invest 2,300 gold to just still lose to her in the long run. Like, you can buy Tabby and Bramble, but you'll still fucking lose to her, and I think that's stupid. Yeah, fuck Fiora, but everyone knows how much I hate Fiora. Build path, it's building out of this thing called Orb of Shadow. This is just the old haunting guys, so that's all I have to say about that. It builds into this Grievous Wounds item now, which is going to be the new Morello. Pretty good overall, I think, set of AP item changes. It's losing some damage overall, but it should still be pretty good, because Liandrys, I think, it is gaining damage for Singed. There is an argument to be made that the new Liandrys will be worse versus Squishies, but at the same time, I think even if it's worse versus Squishies because it doesn't have Magic Pen and Squishies have low health, it's better overall, because it actually has a damaging passive now. Like, it feels like an item instead of feeling like something like, oh well, it doesn't feel like a steroid anymore. Like, it felt like a steroid before because it would fall off really hard. Now it feels like an item. I think, like, other items, like, look at Triforce, look at Cleaver, look at like Titanic Hydra, look at like current Morellos, like look at other stuff like that. Many other common first items are the most powerful item that a character gets. I think Liandrys is also the most powerful item that Singed gets, and I think it should reflect that. And I'm okay with it being this version where it is 3%, sorry, yeah, 1.5% to 3% max health damage. I'm okay with that. Let's for a bit just, I think, talk about Twin Shadows, because obviously people are going to talk about this item because it has movement speed on it, right? So it's gonna bring the spooky ghost back, and it's going to be able to slow character, or sorry, slow enemies. It's just the old Twin Shadows, but it's like I don't think it'll be that good on Singe because it doesn't have any health, right? The 7% movement, the movement speed and CDR together on one item is like theoretically it would be really good, right? If this item gave like 50 AP and like 200 health, it could be really, really good for Singed. Like maybe even like 40 AP and 300 health. But the way it stands, like it doesn't give Singed what he needs. He needs health and AP. You can get movement speed from other sources like Ghost, Ultimate, Boots. You don't really need it on an item unless the item is RG, and even then you don't really need RG if you know how to play Singe properly. I don't think that Twin Shadows will be good, but people are going to bring it up because it has movement speed on it, so that's my take on Twin Shadows. Void Staff doesn't matter, never buy Void Staff on Singed unless it's a crazy ass game. Death Cap, same thing, doesn't matter on Singed because you never buy it unless it's a really crazy, stupid, weird game. I guess for a second I just want to talk about this OPGG stat page for Singed and kind of my thoughts. I guess it's not related to the actual video that much, but I just want to put my input in on the like builds that people are doing and the weird like whatever this is, like the runes. I want to put my input on the win rate. I think currently Singed is very balanced because he was 14th win rate. Like last patch he was 14th win rate. He was like 50.1% win rate. Now he's 50.98. So basically a 51% win rate. His win rate's been going up and down for quite a bit, but I don't think that he's like crazy OP at all. I think he's pretty balanced. He has some horrifically bad matchups that he just gets completely demolished by. Like if you look at these, like Kale, Singed wins 43% of games. Like Yorick, Singed wins 42%. Swain, Singed wins 40%. There's some other characters that like Singe just gets completely fucking demolished by. Like here's a good example, like fucking Gangplank. Like Gangplank just completely fucking demolishes him. Fiora just completely destroys him. Darius is hard as hell too to play against. Gnar, that's a really good example. Gnar just destroys him. Even Camille, right? Camille, who you're technically supposed to beat as Singe, just demolishes him. Vladimir just destroys him. Teemo destroys him. Jace, actually, this one surprised me that Singe actually wins mostly versus Jace. Kennen destroys Singe. Kale destroys Singe. We saw that one before. Yorick, not surprised with that one. Yorick has pretty much been good versus Singe. Heimerdinger, not surprised with that one at all. He just destroys him. So basically what I'm trying to say is that I don't feel like if these AP item changes go through and Singed ends up getting nerfed as a result of Liandrys and Rylais together being too strong, I don't think it would be fair because he's a very like hit or miss character, right? He has good melee. Like here's a good example, right? There are certain melee matchups where Singe will succeed pretty well in. Take for example Illaoi. Take for example Maokai. Take for example Shen. Example Jax. Like fucking Irelia. Like characters like that. Like this is a very balanced matchup, I think, right? There's matchups like this, which is melee versus melee, that Singe tends to do okay in, right? There are some where he seems to excel, like versus Malphite. He has like a 53% win rate, or he's a 54% win rate. Like those are tanks though, right? Like in general, melee versus melee is kind of skill oriented for a Singe matchup. Now, fucking Singe versus ranged, that's a whole nother deal, right? Like, take for example, Gnar. If you were to look at Gnar in this state and then nerf Singed as a result of changes to AP itemization in Liandrys and Rylais, imagine how much worse this number gets for Singe. Imagine how much worse this number gets for Singe versus Fiora, or versus Gangplank, or versus fucking Darius, or versus fucking like Teemo. Like that's kind of I feel like a bit of a problem, right? Because he is the single character in the game who loses the hardest. No other character loses harder to range matchups than Singed. Like every other melee character has a way to either farm at a distance or kind of shield themselves or avoid range harass or like heal themselves, right? Singed has none of that. He has to physically walk into the creep wave, poison it, take damage for free, and then walk away. He doesn't really have a choice there. And that's part of the reason why I feel like, you know, with the counter picks to him being so horrendously strong that it's not really fair to consider like nerfing not just him but other dot champions too. If there's, I don't think other dot champions actually have hard counters like this, but Singed has the most hard counters I think in the entire game. Like there's so many characters who just beat him. Most of the time, like half the reason why he's able to succeed, I feel like, is because he can proxy. Like you have the option, right? You can like survive the first few levels until 6 and then go try and proxy. So not every character has an option. A lot of melee characters have to just sit in lane and get shit on, but at the same time, a lot of those melee characters have gap closers. They have like hard CC, they have like healing, they have ways to dodge damage. Like he doesn't, Singed as a character doesn't have any of that, and that's part of the reason why his win rate versus ranged is so low. I just want to kind of throw that out there, kind of ranting through a bit. I could rant about fucking range matchups and Fiora and Camille and shit like that, Vladimir, all that stuff for a long time. But I'm not going to. I'm going to cut this video off here. Hopefully that kind of rambly video about my thoughts on the AP item changes is somewhat coherent, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. Good night.